week 3 of podcast on Fifth Ave. Julianne Pelusi with Taylor Haase here. Big T. We're going to be talking about Big Z a little bit today. And I think we're going to have to dip into the Sabres jar, unfortunately, already. One of our people on Twitter, one of our followers on Twitter said, Julianne needs a Sabres jar to remind her that she is talking about the Penguins every week. So, but it's okay to dip into the Sabres jar right now because the Penguins came out with a preseason win last night, 3-1 over Buffalo at home. Taylor, what have you – I want to talk about that game a lot, but also what have you been seeing out of Erik Karlsson coming in here so far?
Yeah, I mean, this was the first game that was really like a dress rehearsal. We've seen a couple of the NHL guys get in the earlier games. They've played, but that was mostly like the Wilkes-Barre guys, the depth guys. This one, it was definitely not like the full NHL lineup. There's still some guys in there that I wouldn't expect to see. But like Erik Karlsson, this was his debut. It was the debut for most of the NHL guys. Kind of a quiet night for Erik Karlsson, I would say, in that game. But we saw glimpses of, I think, a fit and what he could be. He played it. He's listed as the second pairing with Marcus Pettersson, but it's really like a 1A, 1B situation. People get too hung up on the order. It could not matter less. Right. I know, like Kyle Dubas said when, like after the trade, that he's like, we could have one of Chris Letang or Erik Karlsson on the ice for 50 minutes on a given night. So like, they're gonna get pretty close to top line minutes, both of them. When the season starts. And even in this game, 5-on-5 ice time was pretty close to even. I think they're only maybe a minute apart. The Karlsson-Pettersson pairing, they weren't on the ice for a goal in either direction. I have like the on ice metrics in front of me. They're pretty good at 5-on-5. So when those guys were on the ice together at 5-on-5, the Penguins controlled 64.1% of all shot attempts, 58% of all unblocked shot attempts, and 73.8% of the expected goal share. So that's pretty good. So like a lot of that is Karlsson just getting shots through and leading the offense, but like they were pretty solid on defense too. A couple times maybe Karlsson was out of position, lost his man, but the big thing with him, just his ability to carry the puck out of the Penguins' end. Mike Sullivan called him and Chris Letang. They can be. He called them like a one-man breakout with the way they can clear the puck out of their own end. And that's something that we saw from Erik Karlsson in San Jose last year. His successful like zone exits. They're like advanced stats sites that like track that. They're called like microstats. Of all defensemen in the league last year, he had the second highest success rate of controlled zone exits at 5-on-5. So it's what it sounds like when you're trying to carry the puck out of your own end and doing it successfully. He did it successfully 76.3% of the time. That was number 2 in the league. Behind only Roman Josi, and Roman Josi had an insane like 93%. So he's in his own league. But that we saw flashes of that. It would have been nice to see him score, but we didn't. But interesting what we saw so far.
And if you can remain productive defensively, then gosh, you have that amazing 1-2 punch. And speaking of that 1-2 punch, Letang and Graves, what are you liking about that pairing?
Yeah, again, kind of a quiet night from the two of them. The results, like the shot attempts and all that were pretty even, around 50% when those guys were on the ice. They were on the ice for a goal for and a goal against. The goal for was Rickard Rakell's opening goal. The goal against was Tage Thompson. One of the few actual talented like NHL stars the Sabres dressed that night. So Yeah, that's still a work in progress too. I asked Graves about that after practice today, and he said, they're still like learning each other's tendencies because this was the first game for both of those guys too. But yeah, that's it. Early impressions are good. I didn't see anything bad. Like it was just another quiet night for them, but it'll be interesting. They have a couple more preseason games left here. It'll be interesting to see how that progresses.
And Big T, I was trying to be there with you last night. Really wanted to be there with you. As you see, I'm in a hotel room right now in Durham, so I'm not going to be around the Penguins as much this off season or this season, and I'm going to be missing you. I'm headed off to South Bend, Indiana, covering Notre Dame football for the season. So going to be catching up, a lot of ESPN Plus action, and trying to keep up with Big T here, man, because one of my neighbors stopped me today or this week and was like, she is a savant. So we'll be kind of doing the whole interview thing going on and keeping up with, what Taylor's seeing at practice. So it stinks I'm not going to be there with you, but we'll keep this pod rolling.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I mean, it's not like we ever recorded like in person together. You're just on Zoom, but like, well, yeah, but it's not Zoom, but like just farther away. But
exactly.
Yeah, we're gonna have some good interviews.
Hi from Durham. I miss you. We'll be right back talking more about the preseason and that bottom six. We're going to see how that's going to shape out and kind of really just one guy in the balance. Well, not one guy, several guys for one spot left in the balance. We'll be right back with Podcast on Fifth Ave. Welcome back to Podcast on Fifth Ave. Taylor Haase and Julianne Pelusi here, and we're going to be joined by John Buccigross from ESPN in just a little bit. Bucci Main is going to tell us a little bit about what he thinks. We were talking about Karlsson a little bit there and the Letang and Graves pairing, and also how the Penguins are going to handle the power play with having Karlsson and Letang. And I think what he had to say is pretty interesting. What do you say, Taylor? What do you think is the right move for them here?
Yeah, so they're definitely going to start with both Letang and Karlsson on that top pairing. I mean, they kind of have the option to do that because Jake Gensel's out, probably 5 games to start the season. So there's an opening. We might not see that all season. But yeah, what they're starting with, it's Letang and Karlsson, Crosby, Malkin, and then Rickard Rakell. That's what they did. They've been doing that in practice the past couple of days, and then that's what they ran in the game against the Sabres. They only had 3 power play opportunities against the Sabres, and the one was abbreviated. It was only like 30 seconds. They didn't score. Karlsson, I asked him at power play after, and he wasn't happy about it at all, just like the chances they had. But I mean, just from watching it compared to how it looked last season, there's just so much more movement between all the guys on the ice. When the power play was streaky, maybe not even streaky, it was just bad a lot last year, given the talent you have on the ice. It shouldn't be that bad with the skill you have on that top unit. But when it was struggling, there was no movement. And when there is movement, it allows guys to use their instincts more. And then that's when you get to see the skill that Crosby has and Malkin and all that come out. So you need that movement. Karlsson's really good at creating that just because of the rate with which he's able to get shots through to the net. I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, but
Come on, Taylor.
I know I wrote about it. I'm not going to pull it up, but it's on the site, DK Pittsburgh Sports, my Karlsson article. But the rate with which he was getting shots through from the power play last year in San Jose, it's crazy higher than what Letang was doing for the Penguins top unit, or even Petrie on the second unit last year. So if he can keep doing that, and you figure he really didn't have that much help with him in San Jose. San Jose was awful, and now he has actual finishers with him on the top unit here. It's just really interesting to see what that can be. But yeah, early impressions I thought were good to the power play. We saw more movement in those 2.5 opportunities combined than we saw all last season. combined, and that's the biggest thing. So.
And last night we saw, we're recording this on Friday, by the way. Last night we saw Drew O'Connor make a very good case for himself in that bottom six. But it's really interesting. That bottom six heading into this regular season is pretty well rounded out, but kind of there's a battle for that last spot on the wing.
Yeah, I mean, Dubas really overhauled the bottom six as much as he could. I mean, Jeff Carter's still around. Drew O'Connor's really the only other returning guy of the regulars. Drew O'Connor, I thought, was one of the few bright spots of the bottom six last year. But I mean, yeah, you look what they have now, like the locks to make it. Carter, like I said, O'Connor, Eller, Achari, and Matt Nieto. The actual combinations, how those guys are going to work out, I don't know yet. We've seen different combinations. The centers are definitely, I think, going to be Eller and Achari. So we're not going to see we're not going to see Jeff Carter at center anymore. He's in the wing, which there's less skating involved. So for someone like him, could be less taxing physically, which could help him. And then, I mean, because he was third line center most of last season, he is skating on the fourth line wing. So it's like his role really could not be more diminished, which is, I mean, a good thing for him, right, given how last season went. But like you said, I mean, that last spot is open. Maybe they're going to carry an extra forward too. So the kind of two spots open, one actually in the lineup. And there's so many guys who are kind of in consideration. Radim Zahorna, Andreas Janssen, Vinny Hinostroza, Alex Nylander, Valtteri Puustinen, and Sam Poulin of the guys who are under contract. And then the PTO forwards, the tryout guys, Austin Wagner and Colin White. It really could be, I mean, probably, maybe not any one of them, but most of them. Zahorna, I thought, really has started to stand out among that group. I mean, Zahorna, he was in the Penguins organization for a couple of years. They lost him to waivers last training camp to Calgary. So he was gone last year. But just seeing him now in camp compared to where he was before he left last year, it's like a totally different player. I mean, he's massive, right? He's like 6'6", I can't remember how much he weighs, but
I mean, that's a big dude. Like,
yeah, that's why he's Big Z.
You don't want to get him angry on the ice.
Yeah,
sure.
Well, he's Big Z.
Big
but
Z,
I mean,
which should we just tell? We just gotta tell.
No, we're not talking about. Anyway, Big Z. So being a big guy like that, conditioning, it's gonna come a little harder to guys like that. And with him especially, you go back to his last full season in the Penguins organization, 2021, that training camp. He was like, most people don't know this. They think he was just like he didn't work out hard over the offseason or something. He came into training camp sick. He didn't know what it was. Whatever it was, he didn't feel right for like 3 months. And then he had to work back to like just gain his conditioning and his energy. So really, his last full season in the Penguins organization, it was really just him playing catch up. And that's why he kind of looked so bad conditioning wise when we did see him. Now he's had like ample time since then, totally normal, totally fine conditioning wise. His hands, I feel like, are better, just like the goals we've been seeing him score. And I mean, the assists he had in the first preseason game. But then like the goals and like the scrimmages too. His attention to detail, like defensively. He's actually, I feel like when they signed him, because he's 27 years old, he hasn't really played a lot in the NHL. I was like, okay, destined for Wilkes-Barre. But now watching him, I'm like, he could be the guy that sticks around. And then after that, I think Alex Nylander is putting himself in a good spot too. We saw him come up, NHL last season, played some of the bottom six, played some of the Malkin's wing. I don't know if he's like ready to be like a full-time NHLer. There's like concerns with his defensive game. And if you're going to put him in the bottom six, that kind of needs to be better. Austin Wagner, the PTO guy, I think
Right.
he's probably in the top maybe 3 in consideration right now for that
That's
spot.
impressive. I mean,
yeah, he could get a contract. He just seems like a good fit there, like good two-way forward, but then he actually has energy. It's kind of physical. But then even like Sam Poulin, he's another one that like coming into this camp, I didn't think he'd really be an option coming out of camp to stick in the NHL, just because he really didn't play last season. In December, he left for mental health reasons. He took a personal leave. He didn't come back until like late March, and then really then it was just practicing with Wilkes-Barre. He only played 2 games in April to finish out the season, and by then it was like Wilkes-Barre's out of the playoffs, so just letting him like try to get back up to speed. But then like watching Poulin in the Prospects Challenge, in like development camp, in the preseason games he's played so far, there's like no indication that he's set back at all by not playing last year.
mm-hmm.
And like talking to him, there's things he says, the things he needs to work on is just being more reliable with the puck, making smarter decisions, which is he's made a lot of strides since then. I mean, like when he was in Wilkes-Barre, his rookie year, he got healthy scratched like one weekend just because he was turning the puck over a lot. He's made a lot of progress in that regard. Probably not, he's not quite where they want him to be if he's going to stick around in the bottom 6. But I mean, other than that, like it's his legs, his timing, everything is there. And I asked him, like, is there anything that you feel like you're still like just trying to catch up on from missing time last year? And he's like, not really. He's like, I feel he feels like good as ever. Just about the things that was always an issue for him. I think maybe he comes up a little bit this season, and then we start looking at him as a long-term option the following season, because he can play center, he can play wing. They prefer him at center. I think I've talked about this every week. Then Jeff Carter's like contract is up this summer. Maybe Poulin steps in as a 3rd or 4th line center,
and that makes more sense, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Makes more sense at that time. So if you had to guess right now, just from what you have seen, and obviously we still have a good chunk of preseason left to play here, but who are the 2 guys that the Pens are going to carry on their roster, those last 2?
Well, I would guess Austin Wagner gets a contract.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm going to say one of Nylander or Zahorna. And because you also figure there's going to be an opening in the top 6 to start just with Jake Gensel out. Right. Nylander and Zahorna can play in the top 6. So I don't know if it's like Nylander you keep around, maybe the way you start the season, you have Raquel and Rust on Sid's line, because that's how they've been skating so far. You know, Riley Smith on Malkin's wing, and then Nylander on the other wing. Then when Jake comes back, Russ goes down to Malkin's wing. Jake comes back on his spot on Sid's wing. And then Nylander either goes into the bottom 6 where Wagner was, or he's the extra forward, or you send him back to Wilkes-Barre and bring someone up as the extra forward. I think we're going to see a lot of movement in that kind of extra forward position throughout the season. Because if you're going to carry like a younger guy like that, you don't really want him sitting like the whole like I wouldn't keep Poulin as the extra forward just because you want Poulin playing. Yeah, you want him playing.
Yeah, he needs the playing time.
Yeah, I'd like to see that. I'd like to see Zahorna get a shot too, just because he's been impressive to watch too. I would 2 of Wagner, Zahorna, and Nylander, I think is going to be my pick right now. So that's what I would go with.
Well, Big T, you have absolutely centered the line for us so far. I'm on one wing. We're going to have John Buccigross from ESPN coming up on the other wing right after this break. Thanks for listening to Podcast on Fifth Ave.
Welcome back to Podcast on Fifth Ave. Julianne Pelusi with Taylor Haase, and we have John Buccigross, Bucci Maine from ESPN joining us today. And Booch, you're a Pittsburgh guy. You understand the Penguins from start to finish, basically your entire life.
Mm-hmm.
What are you thinking about these guys this season? And can you tell us a little bit about you growing up in Pittsburgh?
Yeah, I was born downtown at Allegheny General Hospital, and my dad was a Sears store manager. So we moved about every 8 years: Indiana, Pennsylvania, Steubenville, Ohio, and then up to Warren, Ohio, for a couple years. So yeah, he was a Steelers season ticket holder. Always grew up around Pittsburgh, local news. Watching Channel 2, 4, and 11, and the whole thing. So yeah, I grew up a big Pirates, Steeler fan, and he was a Boston guy. So I actually grew up a Bruins fan and a Boston Celtics fan for the Big Four. And then slowly, as I moved out of the area, I kind of have a nostalgia kind of took over. Now I kind of secretly root for the Penguins. Of course, I'm not supposed to root for anybody, although now in our business, people seem to openly root for their teams. And when I first started, that wasn't really a thing. The homerism was really only tied to maybe the play-by-play guy. There wasn't really outwardly rooting for your favorite team. So, yeah, Civic Arena was the first time I saw an NHL game, and I snuck in there one time when I was 15 with my buddies, and then obviously when Mario came, everything changed. So, and now of course the latest chapter with Crosby and Malkin, Letang, and now they and enter Erik Karlsson as well. So yeah, I'm very bullish this year on the Penguins. I think they're a team that could finish maybe 4th or 5th in the Eastern Conference, and it's going to be interesting. To plug a player like that in there, it doesn't always work, but it's going to be really fun to watch from the get-go.
Can you maybe tell us
between you and Kevin Acklin, you both have stories about sneaking into the Civic Arena. I was like, did anyone pay to get in there? Is that why the team had financial trouble? How easy was it to sneak in?
It was really easy. What we did, we drove there from Steubenville, and and when 26 Chevy Nova, and we bought it one scalper ticket. So we bought some scalper, and then we found the guy who I can't remember if we were pushing this, or he pushed it on us, or he was looking for a ticket, and we said, well, we got one. He goes, well, you give it to me and I'll get you in. So the Civic Arena had clear glass around the outside of the Civic Arena back in the day, so you could see inside when you were outside. So we watched him go in, and he just started to make his way around the Civic Arena. He would look like this and go, keep walking. So we'd keep walking. He's just looking for that chance where he found a door where no one would be watching, whoever, an usher, a security guard, or whatever. And he finally found one. So he opened up this door, and the three of us, me, Steve, and Gibby, snuck in for a Penguin Minnesota North Star game back in 1981. So yeah, it was not difficult. And then the team went bankrupt.
And you've been sneaking in your entire life, so now you're sneaking your way into a bigger role.
Still go for free.
Still sneaking in a bigger role at ESPN lately with when it comes to hockey. How has that transition been with ABC and ESPN taking over hockey? And you're traveling a lot, Booch, and you're kind of getting that experience of being with a hockey team at all times after you didn't have that for a long time when your passion's always been hockey. What's that been like?
Yeah, it's been great. Obviously, the NHL left ESPN in 2004, and then came back there in 2020. Well, that would have been 2022, right? Yeah, 2021. So yeah, 17 years it was away. So yeah, to be able to, I've worked there now for 27 years. It'll be 27 years next month, and to be able to work at one place for a long time, and then suddenly have this re-energized feeling of having not only the sport that you're kind of associated with back, and then you also get to do play-by-play. I did do play-by-play the first time we had the NHL. The NHL left, and then I asked if I could do some college hockey for a couple years. I did that. Then I asked to do the Frozen Four, and I've done 10 of those now, called the last 10 national champions, which has been awesome. Maybe the highlight of my career to be able to do that. And then we came back, and this time I got to do play-by-play. So that's my passion. That's what I want to do. When I was a little kid growing up around Pittsburgh, I would turn the sound down on the TV and broadcast games with my tape recorder to practice, and play DJ with 2 tape recorders, playing music, and do fake newscasts, and make up imaginary baseball games, and with sound effects, a whole 9 innings, like the whole thing. I was like almost had my own production class. Like I didn't even know it. Like I just thought I was a sports fan, but looking back now, I was really a TV production radio nerd. I just liked all the details. Like if the Pirates changed their graphics, if they changed their camera angle by 6 degrees in Three Rivers Stadium, I would notice. I go, there's something different there. And I would listen to the music when they went to commercial break, and I would watch the different graphics and stuff. So I was always, like, looking back now, that didn't really dawn on me until like the last 5-10 years is how much of a TV fan I was, watching shows and watching David Letterman. That was a big, Letterman really liked, you could tell he really liked his show segmented and really produced. He wanted to have constant content and bits that he could always turn to produce a nice 1-hour show 5 nights a week. And that's how I kind of like my podcast too. When I listen to podcasts, I like a nice, tightly produced podcast with almost like a beginning, middle, and end, and they get to the point and they give you good information. And so I realized that growing up that I also was like not only just a sports fan who loves sports, but also the whole production angle as well. And so to be able to do play-by-play now, do some studio stuff. And I wrote a hockey column for 15 years on ESPN.com. So that was a blast as too. So to be able to do everything everything I dreamed of doing growing up, I've been able to do at ESPN.
Well, John, we got to know, what is your prediction for the Pittsburgh Penguins this upcoming season with all that experience?
Yeah, well, I'm bullish on them. I think that Kyle Dubas did a great job, filling out the bottom 6, giving them some depth. Obviously, they got to get goaltending. That's been the one issue. You just don't know for sure what you're going to get in net. And that's been going on for a while now. Even going back to their cups with Matt Murray and Marc-Andre Fleury and Matt Murray. And then, of course, you don't protect Marc-Andre Fleury. And then Matt Murray's career kind of goes sideways with injuries. And now it's like, is Trinch Jari the guy? Is he a guy you can count on to win multiple playoff series? That's what they want to know. But the roster is interesting. Obviously, it's older, especially up top. But I like what Kyle Dubas did, filling out the roster. And the Erik Karlsson's, it's a home run swing. Sometimes you strike out and sometimes you hit a home run. So we'll see. If you got a year like he did last year, Norris Trophy caliber, then it's obviously going to be a huge addition. Their defense was their weakness last year, one of their weaknesses, probably the biggest one. So they signed Ryan Graves. They're bringing Erik Karlsson, and the team is, and that's what veterans need, like a Malkin, Crosby, Letang. They need some juice. They need some swing juice, and that's what Erik Karlsson was. He kind of electrified, I think, their probably resolve and it's hard to. Hockey, football, these are hard sports to play because they're so physical. You need a reason to go to the rink every day and a reason to put your body on the line. And I think those older guys have that now with what Kyle Dubas did. And just Kyle Dubas himself being there re-energized the team.
You're a college hockey guy. Do you have any college hockey predictions? Who's going to win the national championship?
Well, it's interesting. For a while there, we had all these kind of Cinderella stories. Like since I became the voice of the Frozen Four,
the voice
in 2012 in Pittsburgh. My first one was in Pittsburgh. That was really kind of cool how it happened. Yale won, and then their first ever. Union won their first ever. UMass won their first ever. Of course, then last year, Quinnipiac won their first ever. But I think we're now with NIL getting into college sports like we know and getting into college hockey, it seems like the old blue bloods are coming back again. Minnesota's a force again. North Dakota's always good. Here comes Boston University after kind of, they haven't won a national championship in a long time now, well over 10 years. Boston College is suddenly that hot spot where the young kids are going back to BU and BC. So I just wonder if we're going to get back, with the Big Ten hockey and Michigan and Wisconsin and Penn State, those big brand names of college sports. They're going to start attracting more of these young kids. And with the NIL money, a little pocket change on the side, you could see those big schools coming back in vogue like they were for so long. It kind of balanced out for a while. Now I wonder if it's going to be more compression like we see in football.
How much are you able to keep college hockey in your heart now that ESPN has this NHL deal? Yeah,
it's a little tougher, definitely. I do an opening night. The first hockey game of this season is Nashville at Tampa Bay, and I'm doing that game with Ryan Callahan and Kevin Weeks. That's a cool honor to do opening day, kind of like opening day, baseball, and have the first pitch of the first game. That's kind of cool. To do that. And so I've already started, reading up on Nashville and Tampa Bay. And then when that game's over, boom, I have a game in Philadelphia the next week. So I do. But luckily with college hockey, most of the action's Friday and Saturday. So it's just 2 days. And being in New England where I am, there's a lot of games on. I can catch some games. I can even go to a game once in a while, which is kind of cool. I can zip up to Boston. It's 15 minutes away. watch BU play. They're going to have the first pick of the NHL draft next year on their team, so I can go check him out in person. So that's really cool to be. And that college has really helped me now. Once we got back into hockey at ESPN, I go to the rink now, calling games, like you said, being there at the rink. These guys walk in, they go, hey, Bucci. Like, they already know who I am, the guys who went to college. They kind of grew up with me on Twitter in a lot of ways. Twitter kind of came around when they're in middle school. And so they kind of grew up with the Bucci Overtime Challenge and college hockey and that stuff. So it's given me a really nice connection with them. They come over, their face lights up. They come over and say hi. Now it's funny. When I first was in the business, you get kind of nervous around athletes. You guys know how it is. Some of them are short-tempered, or some of them whatever, intimidating. And when we first start out, a lot of them are older, right? First they're older than us, then they're the same age as us, and then we're a little older than them. And you'll get there eventually. And now they're really my sons. They're all my son's age. I look at Philip Forsberg.
Most of them are younger than Brett, your oldest. Like, they're
That's what I'm saying. I'm interviewing Philip Forsberg. He's got this big mustache. He got the hair. He's this grizzled NHL veteran. I'm like, he's born the same year as Brett. Well, there's nothing. I'm in control here. I'm in control of this interview. These are children. You're mere children. So it's funny how that's kind of dawned on me too. It's like, they're like all my kids. They're all my sons. I want them to do well. I want them to do so well.
Speaking of children, Connor Bedard going to make his NHL debut against the Pittsburgh Penguins. What are you expecting out of that game? What are you expecting from Bedard? Adjusting to NHL life, adjusting to NHL schedule, and in that debut, getting to see Sidney Crosby. Goodness gracious!
No, it's awesome that the NHL did that. As part of our triple header coverage. That's game 2, Chicago at Pittsburgh, and then our game 3 is Vegas unveiling their banner. So I think it'll be like Sidney Crosby. I don't think it'll be much of an adjustment for him. I think he's built to do this. He's been programmed to do this at a young age. He's got a lot of Crosby's intangibles of work ethic and being programmed by his agents not to say too much. Occasionally his humor will come out, get his personality come out. But I think he'll be good right from the get-go. I think he'll score a goal on opening night. He already has one of the best shots in the NHL, one of the best releases, wrist shot, snap shot. It's sick. Him and Austin Matthews are kind of like wizardry with what they can do with the stick, tuck it in their feet and get so much on it, and so, change these angles on these goalies, shoot from impossible positions, no matter which way they're striding. It's just, he's a freak. And I think he'll score on opening night in Pittsburgh for his first goal against Sidney Crosby. I think he's that kind of athlete who would do something like that. And I'm looking forward to that. And the next night he's here in Boston. So back to back, he goes black and gold back-to-back nights to start his career, Connor Bedard, in Pittsburgh and in Boston. So both national TV games. That's TNT's first game the next night as well. So a great first week for the league to put Connor Bedard up right here on the silver platter for everyone to see.
We have your prediction on the Penguins. Just what's your Stanley Cup prediction? I know it's not going to be the Pittsburgh Penguins, but who do you think Stanley Cup this year?
Yeah, not quite. But I think the Penguins, like I said, I think they'll make the playoffs. I think they could be a 4 or 5, and they have a good chance to win a round. The East is pretty open. Once you win that first round, that's what's cool about the playoffs. You win the first round, then everybody thinks they could win the Cup, right? Because you go from 16 teams to 8. Then you start realizing. Then you start looking at your path. Like, okay, man, we're right there. We have 12 more wins. Like, we can do this, That's what's cool. So I think the Penguins might be one of those teams in that position that wins their opening round and then suddenly figures, how can we win this Cup? That team got upset in the first round and we just got to get by them. But I was in Vegas this summer and I might have put a little bit of pocket change on the Colorado Avalanche to just a little bit, maybe. And on the Colorado Avalanche, I was there. I was at Circa Pool. I had a couple. So, I was thinking, why not?
Put it down.
Yeah.
It's so Steubenville of you. So Steubenville of you.
Yeah, So I got something to watch. But I think the Avalanche bouncing back, of course, they won the Cup last year. They get killed by the Landeskog injury. Looks like he's hurt again, but if they can somehow get him back, they refigured their team kind of like the Penguins. They made some interesting deals in the bottom 6 and taking a swing at Ryan Johansson, and Jonathan Drouin as well. So, a guy who hasn't quite popped yet in the NHL, but a running mate of Nathan McKinnon back in the day. So, Yeah, I'm going to go back to the Avalanche with Makar, McKinnon. Mikko Rantanen's an absolute future Hall of Famer star. And a lot of people don't realize that he's actually going to be a Hall of Famer. He's that good and still young. So, yeah, I'll go back with the Avs. The East is wide open, though. The East is fun. That's why the Penguins literally could make the Stanley Cup final this year because the Eastern Conference really is wide open. New Jersey could be there. The Rangers could maybe get career years out of some people, and their goalie could get them there. So I really do think the East is anywhere from 6, 7, 8 teams could actually make the final. Where in the West, I think it's pretty much just Colorado, Edmonton, or Vegas again.
Mm-hmm. And you touched on Karlsson earlier in the podcast, but gosh, with him coming in, what do you think that is sexy about him with the Penguins? And what do you think can work? Because they're not getting any younger with that move.
No, for sure. No, he's a Hall of Famer, obviously one of the best offensive defensemen of all time in the NHL. So that's exciting. That's sexy. Great head of hair, handsome guy. Swede, sexy Swede. But, he's not the greatest defensive guy in the world. Like you said, older. The power play is going to be interesting. I just wonder, is anybody going to shoot, or are they just going to pass it around for 2 minutes and they're going to play Harlem Globetrotter music, because it'll look real pretty. But I just wonder if they're going to put Letang and him it looks like they're going to try that. Mike Sullivan's no dummy. He's the reason why he's a good coach. He's not going to sit Erik Letang right off the bat before Karlsson plays the game. Sorry, you're on the second unit, Chris. So that's not going to work. So he'll try them both at the same time at first. But again, Sid likes to pass the puck. Obviously, Gino is shooting less. I wish he'd shoot more. So obviously Gensel's out to start the year. He'll be the guy who roams around the net. He'll clean up with Erik Karlsson. I always say that people like Sidney Crosby make people rich. Like Jake Gensel has a bigger house because he got to play with Sidney Crosby young in his career, score goals and then create his market. So Joe Thornton, Sidney Crosby, they make line mates rich. They get them bigger houses than they would have had. Now Gensel's going to see Erik Karlsson come in, and I think his power play numbers could be off the charts this year, Jake Gensel, once he gets back and if he can stay healthy. But just trying to figure out who could be a shooter. Maybe Letang will shoot the one time or more, with the right hand shot, and maybe Gino. Maybe they'll realize when that pass comes over to you on the top of the circle, shoot it. We have Crosby down low for a rebound, Gensel down there for tips, but at some point they got to shoot. But no, Erik Karlsson, like I said, he injects excitement into the whole operation, especially for the veterans, because they want to play with older, experienced, smart players who are going to make them better. And Erik Karlsson makes people better.
Yeah. We talked about Jari a little bit before. Were you surprised that I guess the Penguins didn't go out and get a number one goalie? I think Julianne and I talked about that before. It seems like there just weren't any options out there.
Yeah, there's some stuff out there, but yeah, you're right. It seems like we've been down this road before, right? We've driven this car enough. It's time for a new car. We know what it looks like. So, sometimes it's just whether it's a relationship or whether it's a goalie. Sometimes it just runs its course, right? And it seemed like that Jari kind of ran its course, but they re-upped. They kind of go back. I guess they like his skill, his age, his market, and like you said, you've got to have a goalie. And if there was no path to get one, obviously Connor Hellebuyck is the guy who's going to be a UFA. It could be a huge market for him if he decides not to sign in Winnipeg, tells Winnipeg, I'm not going to sign an extension, so you better trade me soon or by the deadline, which will happen. That guy is a franchise-altering goalie. So New Jersey really feels like, God, we still don't have a goalie, but if we get this guy, we can win the cup, because that New Jersey's that kind of team. They're good enough now. If they have a goalie, they can win a cup. Right. And there's a lot of those teams like the Panthers and the Maple Leafs and the Devils. The Penguins are they that team? If they were to get Connor Hellebuyck, could they win a cup with that kind of big time goalie? And that's, I'm sure, what they talk about and what they already talked about over the summer. And but yeah, that will be obviously a point that we must look at and examine. And especially if he gets hurt again, then is the backup good enough just to make the playoffs? So it's the biggest question on the team.
Yeah,
to wrap up. Oh, go ahead, Tay.
I was gonna say, yeah, it's hard. You don't really know what you have in Nedeljkovic, because it felt like he was on Carolina. He looked pretty good, but I feel like a lot of goalies look good on Carolina. Then he's coming from Detroit, where a lot of goalies look pretty bad. Detroit. That's my pick where Hellebuyck ends up. So.
I like
to
that.
kind of
Yeah,
wrap up with.
They do have a young goalie in the system, so we'll see if that happens. Yep. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, I'm just butting in right here. So to kind of wrap up with the Penguins, what are like 3 keys that you see for the season that they can be a cup contender in 3 places that you see that they're lacking? Kind of putting you on the spot there, but
Yeah, no. Obviously, we'll start with the goalie. That's where it starts. Is he going to be an upper echelon, top 10 save percentage goalie? Number 2 is the power play. I think if the power play cooks, kind of like Edmonton, they're not quite built like Edmonton with Draisaitl and McDavid. Nobody is, but to have a power play that can really cook, and then just take care of business 5-on-5. Obviously Edmonton almost relies too much on it, so you can't rely too much on a power play. You'll make the playoffs that way, but then when you get in the playoffs, they call fewer stuff, and then eventually you'll probably won't be a playoff team with legs once you get there. So certainly it's the goaltending. It's it's the power play. I think number 2. And that incorporates the Karlsson factor. And then number 3 is just staying healthy, right? They're an older team. Depth is an issue. If Crosby were to have a long-term injury, or Malkin, they both escaped it last year. Malkin actually almost played every game last year. That was rare for him. What if his knee acts up again? They already start the year without Gensel. So like injuries for the older guys will be the biggest key. In terms of lacking, again, do they have a pure goal scorer? Do they still have enough of those when they go up against a Toronto and a Tampa Bay and some of these really good teams? Is someone going to surprise and score goals? Well, because as guys get older, their goal scoring tends to go down just a little bit. Even Crosby's and Malkin, you expect it just to go down, not scoring 40, 50 goals anymore. So someone's got to pick that up. The bottom 6 is still a question. Kyle Dubas really worked on that, and he focused on that, and it looks better on paper. So we'll see. And I think the last question too, it is kind of interesting to me, just what is Mike Sullivan's long-term plan in Pittsburgh? New ownership, now a new guy in charge, and Kyle Dubas. Obviously, he's a championship-winning coach, 2 Stanley Cups. He'd get a job the next day. But is he a guy who's invigorated for whatever this path is the Penguins are on? Because they were in a position where they could have torn it down, trade everybody, and stink again and win lotteries and have that 8-year rebuild like we see Detroit trying to do and Buffalo trying to do. That's hard, though. Look how long it's been for Buffalo and Detroit. So to me, if Sullivan, that's the question, is his energy, is his voice heard in the room and the organization? It seems like he's got a lot of power for players, which is good. And then to see how long that lasts. So it's going to be, it's a fun team to cover for you guys, because there are so many interesting questions and mysteries and great players and a great coach and an interesting GM, right? The most exciting GM in the sport, because he came from Toronto so young, and the analytic factor and everything. So the Penguins got a lot of juice. It's exciting. And maybe that's why I think they're going to do well, just because there's so much juice around them. That doesn't always translate, as we know. So maybe I'm a little rose-colored glasses with just all the fun stuff they've done, and they've kind of reinvigorated the team. But I still think it's going to translate into more wins.
Well, John, Kyle Dubas, not young enough to be one of your sons. Just so
not quite. Not quite.
Not quite. Oh my gosh! Thank you so much for being with us and giving us your Penguins analysis, John Buccigross. So great to have you. Thank you for being with us on podcast on Fifth Ave.
Big fans of the pod. Keep it up, girl.